So I spent 20 years searching for a state of being that I glimpsed in my early 20s that ended up being the solution to my addictions. So in my early 20s, after a deep depression and anxiety, I experienced this profound awakening experience. It was a glimpse where there were no cravings, everything was completely at peace, everything was totally okay, and I didn't want anything in that state. It was the most profound experience I've ever experienced. But obviously it ended and life took over, and before long, in the ups and downs of life, addiction took hold, and I was searching for a solution to my addiction. But I was also searching for this state of being again. It wasn't until I kind of reconnected the two that I found that this state, this capacity that we have, is actually the root of what we're really looking for, and it's the root of addiction. It's also the root of the solution to addiction. So I thought it would be really useful to share this journey with you so that you can also see how this could work for you, and how really this is probably exactly what you're searching for as well. So I'll take you back when I was maybe 19, probably about 19, 20, around that period. And I was one of those people that was kind of a deep thinker. I really wanted to know what life was all about. When I left school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I studied philosophy. I thought that was a legitimate way to ask these questions and still maybe progress in life. But the more I thought about things and the more I went down that rabbit hole, the more I started to see how everything that we experience has a level of uncertainty. For example, what you see, you can't necessarily rely on your eyesight, or what you hear or what you feel. And then it got to the point where I was even doubting my own thoughts, whether they belonged to me, whether they were mine. And then I got even further in to doubt even my own existence. And that's when I experienced this real fear and anxiety, which turned into a combination of anxiety and depression. I know it's a hard thing to explain why you would be anxious and depressed when I just say those words, but the thing is, I was in this state for months. The point of not of waking up and wondering if this was just another dream within a dream, whether I actually really existed, what was really appearing here. And without having this certainty, I had more of this fear and this anxiety. And this went on and on day after day, and I was isolating myself in my room. I really couldn't talk to anyone about it. Nobody recognized what I was saying was anything real, thought I was just going through something. But for me, it was very real. And it got to the point where I just wanted to end it. I just wanted to stop this suffering. And as like 12 o'clock at night one night, sitting on the stairs, rehearsing in my mind, plunging a knife, a big carving knife into me, I had this crystal clear kind of set of thoughts. Some people might say, voice, but it was no sound. It was just crystal clear thoughts went through my mind. If you're not sure about anything, how can you be sure about this? And that just stopped me. It stumped me because I could see that there was even doubt about that. So all I could do was just leave, and I just walked all night for 6 hours, literally all through the night. And at the end, I was exhausted. I caught the bus home, got back into my room. Everyone was still asleep. And I had this experience where my mind just broke open. There was no thought. everything had stopped, everything was still, everything was at peace. There was a complete certainty of existence. But it wasn't me, the individual me, that existed. It was everything at once. And I was not separate from that. So I was searching for certainty, but in the way that my mind was looking for certainty, it could never find that because it was searching for certainty in separateness. But what happened was direct experience that I cannot in words put into words, but it was the most profound experience I'd ever experienced, and it was full of peace, full of joy, full of contentment, full of love. There was no cravings I didn't want for anything. And so that experience profoundly changed the direction of my life. After that, my sole focus was to find out what that was and how to get that back. It might have lasted, I don't know, could have lasted 5 minutes. It could have lasted 30 seconds, could have lasted half an hour. I don't know. Time just did not exist there. So that became the focus of my life. And it really changed everything because I had now experienced something that was absolutely certain. And I was not separate from that. But the me that is normally described as me, was not the same as that. So there's a big disconnect between what everyone talks about as yourself and me and this and that and what that experience was. But I could not deny that experience. So basically, that experience came and then faded away. Like it became a memory. Essentially, it was a memory. But because I had experienced it, and because it was so certain, I knew it was real. And I knew that what I was experiencing, even though it wasn't that, I still had this sense of certainty of that I'm real. I know that sounds weird to say that, but that's what kept me going. And, you know, the search went on, but life also happened. You see, life just keeps happening, doesn't it? I had relationships, I had children, I ended up studying acupuncture because, all the things that I was studying were showing me that there's an energy system in the world within us. And I wanted to understand that. So I wanted to understand it from a legitimate traditional point of view. So I studied Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And I became an acupuncturist. And by default, I was a small business person. I didn't plan to be that. I didn't plan to be doing marketing and sales. That just seemed like foreign and alien and evil to me. And managing staff and budgeting and spreadsheets. And this is so far away from what I was focused on. But I felt that there was something good in that. And I felt that, the holistic, because that was what that experience was. It was holistic. So I felt holistic medicine was really important. And so I wanted to spread that. And I ended up having a business collapse, which was really devastating. It was just really anyone who's experienced that, it's like experiencing a kind of a death and needing to rebuild from that. But all the while, I was still searching for this state of being. And I was reading different traditions. I was becoming part of different traditions. I was, doing meditation. I was going to church. I was going and, speaking to people. Any teachers that came, I went to visit. So this was going on for 20 years. But all the while the ups and downs of life were happening, which just keep happening, addiction was present. Like I'd had addiction when I was younger, and I'd let's say I'd had marijuana addiction and nicotine smoking. I gave that up at the age of 30 through willpower, thinking that that was the only way, and in order to practice acupuncture. But then as the life events occurred, the ups and downs, I was trying to create solutions for happiness in the external world. I thought, to create happiness for my family, for my children, through work. I became a workaholic. And then all of that crashed. My family split up. My business collapsed. And it was a really hard time. I ended up having Jungian psychoanalysis for many years, and that really helped stabilize me. But I, I what really kept me going was I'd had this early experience earlier in my life where I knew everything was okay, but I couldn't reconcile it with the life I was living. And then alcohol took over, and I didn't realize I was addicted until I tried to quit. So at, at some point I realized that I'd been addicted to something every day for probably 20, 25 years. And I didn't really connect up that what I was really looking for in addiction and in my external life, my work, my relationships, my family, and in my, let's say, spiritual quest to experience this experience I'd had, this glimpse I'd had earlier on, I didn't connect all of that up. I didn't realize it was all part of the same journey. How it started to, connect back up was basically I really just started to simplify my life. I started to spend more time being rather than thinking. So I stopped reading, like, I really only read textbooks. I didn't read novels or anything. I stopped reading, to try and find out more knowledge because it was all becoming very repetitive, but I wasn't experiencing it. And so I started just deciding to live and feel and be and then every day I started to practice just being with myself and exploring what that experience really is. And I started to find videos on YouTube where people were talking about that. And so I'd watch these videos and I would start to feel the very faintest type of peace, contentment, which I knew was a fraction or a much diluted version of what I experienced earlier on. And I had experienced that. I had had other glimpses of that experience along the way that I haven't mentioned, but I knew that I was on the right track. So I started practicing this state of being, I would call it, more and more and more. And gradually, things started to settle. At some point, I realized that my mind was what was interrupting everything. That was what was preventing everything. That was what was creating all of this craving, all of this fear, all of this doubt. My mind was creating that, but, and it was also interrupting my ability to experience this deeper state. So basically what I did is I just continued to follow what I could see that was working. And it really all shifted as each day this state became deeper and deeper and more stable. And I started to see changes in my external world. I became less concerned about things about the future or things that had happened. I started to be more patient. I wasn't so frustrated. I didn't resist, didn't have the procrastination. I was able to make clearer decisions. So everything started to settle down. And also, I realized that my addiction to alcohol fell away. Not only that, I also noticed that cravings, they were fading off. They weren't as frequent. They weren't as strong for anything. I was actually becoming more and more okay in my own skin, more and more okay the way things are. Even the ups and downs were something that I didn't reject, because there was also at the same time an experience of this kind of constant, which I would say is, you could say, awareness. Like, awareness is always constant. It's always involved in our experience, but it doesn't come and go. It doesn't judge. It doesn't preference anything. It's just always still, present, clear, open. And I started to really get to know that this is fundamental to this state of being. And the good thing about that is that we all have access to that. We all have awareness. So it's not something that's special to some people and not others. So I really, in myself, was, in a sense, rediscovering consciously how to, you could say, access, or you could really also just say, stop, all the turbulence that was preventing me from experiencing my natural state. So, and this became just clearer and clearer what was happening. So everything was changing at this point. And I was really seeing the connection between this state and addiction, because at the root, I was helping clients with addiction, and what my clients were wanting really at the root, they were just wanting peace and contentment. And that's what we all want, really, isn't it? We just want this peace and contentment, but we're mostly searching for that by changing the external world, by organizing to have various experiences or relationships, or to acquire certain objects, a new car, new clothes, and nothing wrong with all of that. I mean, even having a clean environment, it's all, nothing wrong with any of that. I think where it kind of goes off track is if we misunderstand that. I think where it goes off track is where if we misunderstand that everything that we're doing in the so-called external world is not a fixed state. It's not the state of being that we're looking for. It's not, it's, if we're doing, let me say that again, if we're doing something to try and change how we feel, if we do something on the outside to change how we feel on the inside, that's very limited. The best way is to just go straight to the inside, because that we have access to that straight away. So the problem is that we're mostly trained to try and change our state of being on the inside by changing the external world. And if you really think about what you're doing every day, that's almost every part of the day is about that. Now, nothing wrong with whatever we do on the external. We need to do that. But we need to see it for what it is. It's just necessary stuff of life. We don't want to burden it with our requirement of deep peace and contentment, because deep peace and contentment is actually what we deeply are. And when we don't see that and don't experience that, we then try to get that from the external world, which is not possible. That was like me when I was, after that glimpse, going through life, trying to find that state again in the external world through all of the things of life. All those things are natural and necessary, but they're not the source of my deep contentment or yours. And this is also what happens with addiction. You see, with addiction, we mistakenly expect that addiction is going to give us a state of contentment, even for a short time. But it's a low quality experience, and it's very fleeting, and it's not satisfying. And then we're left feeling empty. Now, it's so sad that that is the case, because it doesn't have to be. When I know that what's inside of me is also inside of you, when I know that, it's so sad that I'm so motivated to help people find that. And you can find it. And so this is what happened, that I, in a sense, really have been working for the last 15 years to make this accessible in the simplest possible and the quickest possible form. And that's how I founded the Truquit method of mind transformation. It's, I've been helping people access this state step by step over this time. And the proof is there, because, there are definite stages that you go through, from learning the intellectual understanding, to then developing the practice, then experiencing some results, then expanding and lengthening the experience of that peace and contentment, and then starting to see that affect different parts of your life spontaneously, and then start to see the addiction falling away, because it's of lesser quality. The subconscious doesn't care about the addiction. It cares about your state of being naturally. And this state of being is very satisfying. And we have the ability to access it. So the doorway for the access is awareness. This very awareness that you are using, or that is present for you to experience this video, this awareness that you have is the pathway. It is one and the same as the essence of your mind, the essence of your being. It's just that our conceptual mind and what we think about ourselves and everybody and the world, we put like a filter on, which makes us believe that things are separated and disconnected and not this peace. So what we want to do is unlearn that habitual filtering process by experiencing the truth of our nature. And I mean, it's a bit like, I imagine a fish learning to experience water. When they don't know anything different than water, as their world. That so, but there is a way. It is confusing, but that's why, I mean, if it was really super obvious, everyone would have told everyone else, right? But it's a process, and I won't go into the detail of that here. But what I will say is that what this has taught me over the 20 years is that addiction isn't the problem. Addiction is what happens when we lose access to our deeper state. We feel disconnected. We somehow intuitively know that there is the possibility of wholeness and connection, and we go searching for it. All the myths of, the pilgrim or the hero or the heroine going away from their home, searching, coming back home and finding what they were looking for. That's just a metaphor for us finding what we already have within ourselves. And life's challenges, their relationships, the family, business, loss, gain, ups, downs, they can push us away from this state if we believe that the world around us has to be in a certain configuration for us to be happy. But if we realize that the way the world is can be whatever it is, and our own happiness is something that is within us, it's always available. Now, of course, it doesn't mean we don't experience pain or joy or, all the other forms of suffering. But they are fleeting experiences. They just literally come and go each moment. And they don't have to overwhelm us. They don't have to be the total experience that we're experiencing. I mean, if we're feeling sad right now, that doesn't have to be the total experience because we're experiencing this room. We're experiencing sitting here. We're experiencing listening to this, seeing this video. Where we can actually experience a deeper state within us, below the sadness. And the sadness becomes small, or maybe it comes and goes in waves. It's not, these experiences are not constant, but there's deeper contentment can be. And it can be, let's say more or less in intensity. It's not really something that can be described, but it can be known. And there is a step-by-step path where you can access this. Now, I'm not talking about, ultimate spiritual realization here. I'm just talking about, just a small access. A small access to this state has profound changes on our whole life. And addiction can fall away even in that small access. So I'm not talking about something that's reserved for the very few who've, studied for 20 years and, done all sorts of practices in isolation or, is a really saintly person. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ordinary person like me who has just a small window of understanding and experience can have profound changes in your life, in your every moment, your state of being. So, I guess, we want to make a distinction between the types of addiction recovery systems that force you to focus on the substance or the behavior as the problem, rather than focusing on accessing more of what you are, opening up your awareness and realizing what you already are, and then noticing that the addiction falls away by itself. You don't need willpower for that, you know. So we don't need to stay in a feeling of isolation and disconnection. I mean, isolation and disconnection are really a state of being, and we already have, like I was saying before, the ability to experience oneness, even right now. Your awareness, I can prove it to you, your awareness is not separate from anything in this room. And you are not separate from your awareness. So you are one with the room. Now, I know that's conceptual as I say it, but if you actually stop and experience it, then it's yours. It's your own direct experience and proof. So the Truquit method is really kind of consciousness-based recovery. It isn't about fighting. You know, it's about returning to the truth of what we are. It's about being gentle with ourselves, being understanding with ourselves. It's a subtle experience of really real clarity. So, you know, you want to develop this stable access, even to a small degree, of our deeper state. And, you know, this is particularly useful for people over the age of 40 because you've done all the other things. You've looked for happiness everywhere else on the outside, and you've tried all the methods. Finally, this makes sense, doesn't it? This really makes sense. And what we need to do is actually learn to experience it, experiential, not just think about it. It's not conceptual knowledge. So if you're exhausted from that external search for answers, you know, I really invite you to come home to yourself. You know, if you've had glimpses of peace but can't maintain it, we now know why. It does require some time, some focus in your day on a daily basis. And, you know, if life's ups and downs have really pushed you around, really created traumatic experiences and memories, you can see these as memories rather than present day suffering. You can experience the truth of right now being okay. So if you're over 40 and kind of sense there's a deeper solution, I really invite you to look more closely into this. My whole approach and all the videos are really founded on this approach. So it's probably exactly what you've been searching for. So it took me 20 years to really crystallize this. And I'm still on this journey. I'm no different. I'm continually, you know, opening to a deeper and more stable awareness of life, of what this existence is, what me is, and what you are as well, people I meet. It's really, it's a real privilege. It's a real, you know, to be connected with other people and to see people coming out of suffering. It's really beautiful. You know, this journey has really given me something very, very valuable. And even the painful times, the times of utter loneliness and despair, I can now see exactly how that occurred and why it occurred. And that's because I'm looking back from the other side in the sense of, you know, seeing awareness of what more of my true nature is. I don't claim to have any special deep insight. other than a small glimpse. But that's enough. That's enough. And that's enough for everyone. So, if you want more, there is a masterclass if you want to quit your addiction this way, or there's other videos, and I encourage you um, to keep allowing yourself to absorb this. This is kind of how I did it. I allowed myself to absorb every day, and then that starts to become a lived reality. So, and I'd love one day to meet you. Or if not, maybe just comment, share your thoughts. And I'd love to hear what you think. And if there's anything that I've said here that you'd like me to expand upon, because then I'll look at that and do what I can to satisfy that understanding. All right, take care and see you next time. Bye for now.